The last couple of days have not been easy for those either trying to get to the airport or within the airport, boarding those military aircrafts out to either third countries or any of the allied countries. There are still more people on the ground. But as you and I know, this has been a rushed exit, not even comparable to the evacuations that took place because of COVID last year, made worse even by the terror attacks at the airport, which left at least 170 Afghans dead and 13 US soldiers killed on Thursday. We'll be looking at America's foreign policy amidst a Taliban rule and the future of American-Afghan relations. My guest is former US diplomat Ambassador Susan Page, who served under the Obama administration. We'll learn more about Ambassador Page in our discussion later in the program. I'm Amarachi Obani. Let's begin with a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles, and we'll be right back.
The African Union has appointed former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo as High Representative for the Horn of Africa. The announcement was made by AU Commission Chairperson President Musa Faki Mahamat, who says the former Nigerian president was part of the African Union's drive to promote peace, security, stability, and political dialogue all over the Horn of Africa region, and that Mr. Obasanjo brings with him very much political experience and impeccable credentials of keen commitment to the lofty ideals of Pan-Africanism and regional integration and cooperation, as well as a deep knowledge of the current situation in the Horn of Africa.
It will require a lot of cooperation from within Africa and from outside Africa.
Nigeria has signed a military technical cooperation agreement with the Russian Federation. Representing the Nigerian side was the Minister of Defense, Major General Bashir Magashi, retired, while the Director of the Federation Service for Military Technical Cooperation, Dmitry Shugaev, signed for the Russian Federation. The signing ceremony, which took place on August 23, 2021, was witnessed by the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awal Zubairu Gambo, the Defense Attaché in the Embassy of Nigeria in Moscow, Air Vice Marshal Olatokunbo Adesonya, representatives of the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Air Force and other military officers of the Nigerian Ministry of Defense, and Nigeria's ambassador to the Russian Federation, Professor Abdullahi Shehu. The agreement terminates the earlier agreement between the two countries signed on March 6, 2001. The UAE's ambassador to Nigeria, Dr. Fahad Obaid Al-Tafak, says there is no official communication placed on issuance of work permits for Nigerians living and working in the Emirates. He made the remarks when he received the chairman, CEO of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Abike Dabiri Irewa. He denied rumors making the rounds on social media, where he says he also learnt of the news. He said the UAE has no restriction against any nationality, adding that there are possibly isolated cases of individuals whose work visas were not renewed for various reasons, and that last week, the UAE issued more than 50 visas to Nigerians, stressing that there are thousands of Nigerians working and living legally in the UAE. He was also optimistic that Emirates Airlines would soon resume flights into Nigeria.
There has been no official restriction on Nigerians. From what I believe as an official position from the UAE, UAE is a very welcoming country. We have no discrimination against any nationality. Everyone is welcome to come.
What we hear is, oh, you've deliberately stopped issuance of work permits to Nigerians. And we're glad to hear that we communicate that message to our brothers and sisters. And also tell Nigerians in the UAE that when they see anybody behaving badly, they are the ones that should stop it and warn their colleagues, and so that the bad will not affect the good.
Meanwhile, the NIDCOM chairman has congratulated Abiola Akinbiyi on her recent appointment as the first Nigerian Community Representative Commissioner of the Victorian Multicultural Commission in Australia. Akinbiyi's appointment was announced alongside other appointees by the Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Honourable Ross Spence, the Premier of Victoria of the Australian
This is
Labour
the
Party.
Boogeyman Show.
Each commissioner is recognised for their skills and life
Subscribe to my
experience,
YouTube channel.
championing cultural and religious diversity across Victoria. Mrs. Abike Dabiri Irewa urges Mrs. Akinbiyi not to relent in her service to humanity, but to remain focused and strive to achieve more in the service of mankind. Akinbiyi is a community leader, an advocate, an award-winning entrepreneur, a nurse, a nurse educator, and an IT professional. She has served in many developmental committees and associations and is a mentor to many African youths.
Welcome back. It's the final days of evacuation from the Hamid Karzai International Airport in Afghanistan. But there are still hundreds more people yet to leave the country as the Taliban takes full control of government and resources. Usually troops should be the last to leave, and the US government is keeping its word of maintaining the August 31st deadline.
With most European countries already wrapping up their exits from Afghanistan and the Taliban not willing to budge on the August 31st deadline, US Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby, as of Saturday, said US troops had begun their withdrawal from Kabul airport. Nearly 6,000 troops have been deployed at the airport to secure the airlift operation since the Taliban's takeover of Kabul on August 15th. More than 100,000 people have been evacuated since then. Officials had said that as troops have flown out there was an increase in concern about the threat posed to the airport by militants from the Islamic State Khorasan group, with a focus on rocket attacks and vehicle-borne explosives. Following an Islamic State suicide bombing on Thursday that killed over 100 Afghan civilians and 13 US troops, the US military launched a drone strike on Friday that it said targeted members of the group in Nagana province east of Kabul.
They have two high-profile planners, or one planner, one facilitator, that are no longer on their muster roll. So they have lost some capability to plan and to conduct missions. But Barbara, make no mistake, nobody's writing this off and saying, well, we got them, so we don't have to worry about ISIS-K anymore. Not the case.
Kirby says not all threats have been eliminated, though.
The threat stream is still active, still dynamic. We're still laser focused on that and force protection. And we aren't thinking for a minute that what happened yesterday gets us in the clear. Not a minute. But do we believe that we hit valid targets? Bad guys who can do bad things and can plan bad missions? Absolutely. And do we think that will have some impact on their ability going forward? Absolutely.
On Friday, the Pentagon said the Taliban was not in charge of any part of the military section of the airport or its gates, which remain under US military control. But the deadly attack outside the Kabul airport on Thursday evening caused unrest among citizens and startled the public to flee from the country. People left in such a hurry that big moments happened while in transit, such as the birth of a baby girl while on board an evacuation flight to Britain early on Saturday. The mother, 26-year-old Somen Nori, started having contractions during the Turkish Airlines flight from Dubai to Birmingham and gave birth as the plane flew at an altitude of 33,000 feet in Kuwaiti airspace. Mother and baby is said to be in good health. The UK had evacuated almost 15,000 Afghan and British citizens over the past 2 weeks, with the last flight expected on Saturday. British armed forces were preparing to leave, taking a small number of Afghan citizens with them over the weekend. Other European countries, such as France, are already done with evacuations. President Emmanuel Macron says France will be holding preliminary discussions with the Taliban in Afghanistan about the humanitarian situation in the country and the potential evacuation of people at risk.
Nous sommes en train de mener des discussions. Elles demeurent encore fragiles et très provisoires. C'est pourquoi je sais.
He was speaking at a news conference in Baghdad, Iraq, where several Middle Eastern leaders were attending the summit. He said France was also working with Qatar on scenarios to re-establish a pathway for evacuations, although nothing is yet certain and it is unclear how it would work.
Et ensuite, oui,
in neighboring Iran, the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei drew parallel between US President Joe Biden's government and its approach to the nuclear accord to that of former President Donald Trump, who withdrew from the deal in 2018 and reimposed sanctions on Iran.
مسائل هسته‌ای مطالبه میکنن از ایران همون چیزی که
He
ترامپ
said,
مطالبه
back
کرد.
then, those in power and the government said it's impossible and that it is irrational. Today, they want those same things. Nothing has changed. He, Trump, said it in one way, and now they are saying it another way.
او با یه زبان میگفت اینا با یه زبان دیگه میگن.
Many Afghans leaving the country are doing so because of an uncertainty about their future.
I feel here comfortable right now, but when I was in Afghanistan, and I was not feeling good because since the Taliban was enter and they were surrounding all the Kabul, and I was hiding in Kabul. I was trying to get into the Kabul International Airport to have a safe flight.
Back in Kabul, the streets are quiet Saturday night and chaos only exists at the airport where evacuations have been going on and America's 20-year military involvement in Afghanistan comes to an abrupt end.
Joining me now is former first U.S. Ambassador to South Sudan and former Deputy Special Representative for the Rule of Law at the United Nations Stabilization Mission in Haiti. She's also served as Special Representative of the Secretary General to the United Nations Mission for Justice Support to Haiti. Ambassador Susan Page is now a Professor of Practice in International Diplomacy at the Gerald R. Ford School of